what if I told you? The moment you meet your soulmate isn't random at all. It's something God has been carefully planning long before you ever realized it. While you've been waiting, questioning, even doubting if the right person will ever come, God has been working behind the scenes, removing the wrong people, shaping your heart, and aligning paths in ways you can't yet see. Because when God introduces you to your soulmate, it doesn't happen by chance. It happens with purpose, with timing, and with a kind of peace that feels different from anything you've ever known. And today, you're about to discover the 4 powerful ways God makes that introduction happen. Ways that might already be unfolding in your life right now. And the first powerful way God introduces you to your soulmate is something most people misunderstand, something that often feels painful when you're going through it, but later becomes one of the clearest signs of His protection. God separates you before He connects you. This is the part of the journey that nobody talks about with excitement, because it doesn't feel like progress. It feels like loss. It feels like confusion. It feels like prayers going unanswered. And sometimes, it even feels like God is taking away the very thing you were hoping for. But what you don't realize in that moment is that God is not removing something good from your life. He is removing what is not aligned with your future. You see, before God brings the right person into your life, He has to clear the space in your heart, in your mindset, and even in your environment, because you cannot hold on to what is wrong and expect to receive what is right at the same time. Many people try to carry past attachments, old emotions, and broken connections into something new, but God understands that true love, the kind that is meant for you, requires a clean foundation, not one that is built on confusion, insecurity, or unresolved pain. Think about it. How many times have you held on to someone even when deep down you knew something wasn't right? How many times did you ignore the signs, convincing yourself that if you just tried a little harder, loved a little deeper, or waited a little longer, things would somehow fall into place? But instead of peace, you felt anxiety. Instead of clarity, you felt doubt. And instead of growth, you felt stuck. That wasn't love aligned by God. That was a lesson allowed by God. And sometimes the hardest truth to accept is that the person you were fighting to keep is the very person God was trying to remove. Not because you didn't care, not because your feelings weren't real, but because their role in your life was temporary. They were never meant to stay. They were meant to teach you something, to reveal something within you, to show you what you deserve and what you should never settle for again. When God begins this process of separation, it doesn't always happen gently. Sometimes it comes through distance, sometimes through misunderstandings, sometimes through situations that force the connection to break. And in those moments, it's easy to feel like everything is falling apart. But in reality, everything is being realigned. God sees what you cannot see. He knows the conversations you were never part of, the intentions that were never revealed, and the future that would have unfolded if that person had stayed in your life. And because He loves you too much to let you walk into something that would eventually break you, He steps in and removes it, even if it hurts in the moment. What feels like rejection is often redirection. What feels like loss is often protection. And what feels like an ending is often the beginning of something far greater than you imagined. There is a reason why certain relationships don't last. No matter how much effort you put in, no matter how much you pray, no matter how much you hope, if it is not aligned with what God has planned for you, it will not remain, and that is not something to be bitter about. That is something to be grateful for. Because imagine if God allowed every person you wanted to stay in your life. Imagine if He said yes to every attachment, every desire, every emotional connection. You would end up settling for something far less than what was truly meant for you. Sometimes we ask God for love, but we try to define it ourselves. We choose based on feelings, on comfort, on familiarity. But God chooses based on purpose, on alignment, and on what will truly elevate your life, not just emotionally, but spiritually and mentally as well. And here's where it gets even deeper. This separation is not just about removing the wrong person, it's also about transforming you. Because while God is taking certain people out of your life, He is also working within you. He is teaching you to let go. He is teaching you self-respect. He is teaching you that your worth is not defined by who stays or who leaves, but by who you are in His eyes. Many times, we attach our identity to relationships. We start believing that if someone leaves, it means we weren't enough. But God uses these moments to break that mindset, to show you that your value was never dependent on someone else's ability to see it. And until you truly understand that, until you stop chasing validation and start embracing your own worth, you won't be ready for the kind of love that God wants to give you. It's important to understand that your soulmate is not someone who will complete you in the way people often describe. They are not there to fix your brokenness or fill your emptiness. They are there to complement a version of you that has already grown, healed, and matured through the process God took you through. That's why separation comes first, because God is not going to connect you with someone who is aligned with your future while you are still emotionally tied to your past. He needs you to release what was so you can receive what is meant to be. And yes, that process can be painful. Letting go is never easy, especially when you had genuine feelings, genuine hopes, and genuine plans. But holding on to something that God is trying to remove will only delay what He is trying to bring into your life. There's also a level of trust that God is building in you during this phase. Trust that what He removes, He replaces with something better. Trust that what doesn't work out is not meant to work out. And trust that His timing is not a denial, but a preparation. Because often, we think we are ready for something just because we desire it. But God sees the bigger picture. He sees the emotional patterns you haven't broken yet, the insecurities you haven't healed yet, and the lessons you haven't fully understood yet. So He allows certain experiences to happen, not to harm you, but to shape you into someone who can handle the love that is coming. And one day, when you finally meet the person who is truly meant for you, you will look back at every separation differently. You won't see it as heartbreak anymore. You will see it as direction. You won't see it as loss anymore. You will see it as preparation. You will realize that if those past connections had worked out, you would have never become the person you needed to be, and you would have never been available for the person who was truly meant for you. Everything that left your life made room for what is about to enter it. Everything that ended was clearing the path for something aligned, something peaceful, something real. So if you are in a season right now where things are falling apart, where people are leaving, where connections are breaking, don't immediately assume that something is wrong. Consider the possibility that something is being made right. Consider the possibility that God is actively working in your life, removing what doesn't belong so that when the right person comes, there is no confusion, no competition, no emotional baggage holding you back. Because when God finally connects you with your soulmate, it won't feel forced, it won't feel complicated, it won't feel like you have to fight to keep it together. It will feel aligned, it will feel peaceful, and most importantly, it will feel right in a way that doesn't require constant questioning. And that is why separation is not something to fear. It is something to understand, something to embrace, and something to trust, because it is the first step in a process that leads to something far greater than what you lost. God separates you before He connects you, not to punish you, but to position you, not to hurt you, but to protect you, and not to take away your love story, but to rewrite it in a way that is deeper, stronger, and more meaningful than anything you could have created on your own. And as you begin to understand that what left your life was never meant to stay, the second powerful way God introduces you to your soulmate becomes even clearer. And that is this: God works on you before He reveals them. Because after the separation, after the confusion settles and the silence begins to speak louder than the noise you once held on to, you enter a season that feels unfamiliar. A season where nothing dramatic is happening on the outside, but everything is being transformed within you. And this is where most people get impatient. This is where doubt starts to creep in. This is where you begin to wonder if you've been forgotten, if your prayers are being ignored, if love is even written for you at all. But what feels like stillness is actually one of the most important phases of your journey, because God is not delaying your love story. He is developing you for it. You see, it's easy to ask God for the right person. It's easy to pray for someone who will love you, understand you, and stay with you. But what many people don't realize is that receiving that kind of love requires becoming someone who can sustain it. Because real love, the kind that is aligned with purpose, is not just about emotions. It's about maturity, patience, self-awareness, and strength. And if God were to bring your soulmate into your life before you are ready, you might misinterpret them, mishandle them, or even push them away without realizing it. Not because they are wrong for you, but because you are still operating from wounds, insecurities, or patterns that haven't been healed yet. That's why this season of personal growth is not optional, it's necessary. During this time, God begins to work on the parts of you that you often ignore when you are distracted by relationships. He starts revealing your patterns, the way you react when things don't go your way, the way you attach too quickly or hold on too tightly, the way you sometimes seek validation from others instead of finding it within yourself. And these realizations are not always comfortable. In fact, they can be challenging because growth requires honesty, and honesty forces you to confront parts of yourself that you may not have wanted to see before. But this is not God criticizing you. This is God refining you, shaping you into someone who is emotionally and spiritually ready for what is coming. He begins to teach you patience, not the kind of patience that feels passive, but the kind that builds trust, the kind that allows you to remain steady even when you don't have all the answers. Because when your soulmate enters your life, there will be moments that require understanding, moments that require calmness, moments where reacting impulsively could damage something meaningful. And God is preparing you for those moments now. He teaches you self-worth, showing you that your value is not dependent on attention, affection, or approval from others, but is something that exists within you regardless of who is in your life. Because if you don't truly understand your worth, you may accept less than you deserve, or you may depend on your partner to constantly reassure you, which can create imbalance in the relationship. God also uses this time to heal you. Not just the obvious wounds, but the deeper ones, the ones that were hidden beneath distractions, the ones that influenced your decisions without you even realizing it, the heartbreak you experienced, the rejection you felt, the moments where you questioned yourself. All of it left an impact. And if those wounds remain unhealed, they can shape the way you approach love in the future. You might become guarded, distant, or overly dependent, and none of these patterns align with the kind of love God wants for you. So instead of rushing you into something new, He slows you down. He allows you to process, to reflect, to understand, and ultimately to heal. And healing doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean pretending that nothing happened. It means reaching a point where your past no longer controls your present, where your experiences no longer define your expectations, and where your heart is open, not because you are naive, but because you are strong enough to trust again without losing yourself. This is the version of you that your soulmate will meet. Not the broken version, not the confused version, but the healed, aware, and grounded version that knows what love truly means. At the same time, God is also aligning your mindset. He is shifting the way you see relationships, moving you away from unrealistic expectations and emotional dependency, and guiding you toward a deeper understanding of connection, partnership, and purpose. You begin to realize that love is not about filling a void, it's about sharing a life. It's not about losing yourself in someone else, it's about growing together while still maintaining your individuality. And this shift is crucial, because without it, even the right relationship can become overwhelming or unbalanced. There's also a level of discipline that God builds in you during this phase. Discipline in your emotions, discipline in your decisions, discipline in the way you choose who to allow into your life. Because not everyone who shows interest deserves access, and not every connection deserves your energy. God teaches you to be selective, not out of fear, but out of wisdom. He helps you understand the difference between temporary attraction and meaningful connection, between surface-level compatibility and deep alignment. And this awareness protects you from repeating the same mistakes, from falling into the same patterns, from settling for something that looks right on the outside but feels wrong on the inside. What's important to remember is that while God is working on you, He is also working on your soulmate. They are going through their own journey, their own lessons, their own growth. Just as you are being prepared for them, they are being prepared for you. And this mutual preparation is what makes the connection so powerful when it finally happens, because both of you arrive not as incomplete individuals looking to be fixed, but as whole individuals ready to build something meaningful together. And yes, there will be moments in this season where you feel alone, where you question the process, where you wonder how much longer you have to wait. but those moments are also part of the transformation. Because in those moments, you learn to rely on God in a deeper way. You learn to find peace within yourself, and you learn that your happiness is not dependent on someone else's presence. This independence is not meant to isolate you. It's meant to strengthen you so that when you do enter a relationship, you do so from a place of fullness, not emptiness. One day, when this season comes to an end and God finally reveals your soulmate to you, everything will make sense. You will understand why the timing had to be the way it was, why the waiting was necessary, why the growth couldn't be rushed. You will see the difference between who you were before and who you have become, and you will realize that if you had met this person earlier, you wouldn't have been able to appreciate them in the same way. You wouldn't have been able to build something as strong, as stable, and as meaningful as what you are now ready to create. So if you are in this phase right now, don't resist it. Don't rush through it. Don't try to escape it by filling the silence with temporary distractions or temporary people. Embrace it, learn from it, grow through it, because this is where the foundation is being built. This is where you are becoming the person who can not only receive love, but also give it in the right way. God works on you before He reveals them, not to test your patience, but to prepare your heart, not to delay your blessing, but to ensure that when it arrives, it stays, grows, and flourishes in a way that reflects everything you've been shaped into during this journey. And as you continue to grow, to heal, and to become more aligned with the person you are meant to be, the third powerful way God introduces you to your soulmate begins to unfold in a way that you could never fully predict, and that is this: God aligns your paths in unexpected ways. Because by the time you reach this stage, you may have already let go of what needed to leave. You may have already gone through the quiet process of transformation, and you may feel like things are finally becoming clear within you. But what you don't always see is how God is now working around you, arranging circumstances, shifting timelines, and connecting moments in ways that seem ordinary on the surface, but are deeply intentional beneath it. This is where divine timing becomes real, not just as an idea, but as an experience. Because when God begins to align two people who are meant to meet, He doesn't always announce it with something dramatic. Instead, He weaves it into the flow of your everyday life. It might start with something small, something you almost overlook, a decision you didn't think twice about, a place you didn't plan to go, a conversation that happened at the right moment, or even a delay that forced you into a different direction. And at the time, none of it seems significant. None of it feels like a turning point. But later, when you look back, you begin to see how every detail was connected, how every step was leading you closer to that one encounter that would change everything. Because when God aligns paths, He doesn't just focus on the destination. He orchestrates the journey, making sure that every experience, every lesson, and every shift happens in the exact order it needs to. There is something powerful about the way God uses what we often call coincidence. We say things like, "it just happened," or "it was random," but in reality, there is nothing random about it. What feels accidental to you is often intentional in God's plan. That missed opportunity that once frustrated you, the change in your routine that felt inconvenient, the unexpected turn that took you away from what you thought you wanted, all of it was part of a greater alignment. Because sometimes God has to redirect you, not because you were going in the wrong direction, but because the timing wasn't right yet, because the person you were meant to meet was not at that place at that time, and if you had stayed on your original path, your lives might not have crossed when they were supposed to. And this is where trust becomes essential, because you won't always understand why certain things happen the way they do. There will be moments where plans fall apart, where expectations don't match reality, where you feel like you're moving in circles instead of moving forward. But what feels like a detour is often divine positioning. God sees the bigger picture. He knows where your soulmate is, what they are going through, what they need to learn, and when they will be ready. And He aligns your life accordingly, even if it means changing your direction in ways that don't make sense at the time. What's even more fascinating is that this alignment doesn't only involve you, it involves the other person as well. While you are being guided, they are being guided too. While your path is shifting, theirs is shifting in ways that complement yours. There are moments in their life that are shaping them just as your experiences are shaping you. And at the right time, those two paths begin to move toward each other, slowly, naturally, without force. This is why when the connection finally happens, it often feels effortless. Not because relationships don't require effort, but because the meeting itself doesn't feel forced or complicated. It feels right. It feels natural. It feels like something that was meant to happen rather than something you had to chase or create. And this is very different from the connections you may have experienced before. In the past, you might have tried to make things work. You might have forced conversations, overlooked signs, or convinced yourself that something was right even when it didn't feel that way deep down. But when God aligns your path with the right person, there is a different kind of flow, a different kind of clarity. You don't have to overthink every interaction. You don't have to question every intention. You don't have to constantly wonder where you stand. Instead, things unfold in a way that feels steady, in a way that feels grounded, in a way that gives you a sense of peace rather than confusion. That doesn't mean everything will be perfect or without challenges, but it does mean that the foundation is different. It is built on alignment rather than coincidence, on purpose rather than impulse. And because of that, even the challenges that come will feel different. They will feel like opportunities to grow together rather than signs that something is falling apart. This is the kind of connection that God prepares through alignment. Not something rushed, not something forced, but something developed through time, through experience, and through intentional positioning. Another important thing to understand about this process is that it often happens when you are not actively searching for it. Not because there is anything wrong with wanting love, but because by this stage, your focus has shifted. You are no longer trying to fill a void. You are no longer chasing validation. You are living your life, growing, evolving, and becoming more connected to your purpose. And it is in this state of alignment within yourself, that God brings someone into your life who aligns with you externally as well. Because when you are grounded in who you are able to recognize what truly matches you, and you are less likely to be distracted by what doesn't. Sometimes, people expect a dramatic moment, a clear sign, something that instantly tells them, this is the person. But often, it's much quieter than that. It might start with a simple conversation, a shared understanding, a sense of familiarity that you can't fully explain. It builds gradually, naturally, without pressure. And that's because God is not trying to overwhelm you. He is introducing you to something that is meant to grow, something that is meant to last, something that is rooted in stability rather than intensity. When you look back on your life after this moment, you begin to connect the dots in a way you couldn't before. You start to see how certain events, certain decisions, certain changes were all leading you here. The things that once confused you begin to make sense. The delays that once frustrated you begin to feel necessary. And the timing that once felt slow begins to feel perfect. Because you realize that if anything had happened differently, if any step had been skipped or rushed, you might not have been in the right place, mentally, emotionally, or physically, to receive this connection in the way it was meant to be experienced. So if you are in a place right now where things feel uncertain, where your path doesn't seem clear, where you are questioning why things are unfolding the way they are, take a moment to consider that there may be a deeper alignment taking place. That what feels like randomness may actually be precision. That what feels like delay may actually be timing. And that what feels like confusion may actually be a process you will only understand once it has fully unfolded. Because God aligns your paths in unexpected ways, not to confuse you, but to guide you, not to leave things to chance, but to ensure that when the moment comes, it is exactly as it needs to be. And when that moment arrives, when your paths finally cross with the person who has been prepared for you, just as you have been prepared for them, you won't have to force it. You won't have to question it endlessly. You won't have to struggle to keep it together. Instead, you will recognize it through the sense of alignment, the sense of timing, and the sense of peace that comes with knowing that this was not something you created on your own, but something that was carefully arranged, step by step, moment by moment, by a God who knew exactly what he was doing all along. And after everything you've been through, the letting go, the growth, the unexpected turns that slowly guided you into alignment, the fourth powerful way God introduces you to your soulmate becomes the clearest and the most undeniable sign of all. And that is this: God gives you peace, not confusion. Because by the time you reach this moment, you are no longer the same person who once confused intensity with love or chaos with passion. You have lived through the uncertainty. You have experienced the emotional highs and lows. You have questioned, doubted, and overthought more times than you can count. And through all of that, God has been teaching you something quietly but consistently, that what comes from Him will never leave your heart in a constant state of unrest. You see, one of the biggest mistakes people make is believing that love is supposed to feel overwhelming, unpredictable, and consuming, that if it's real, it must come with emotional extremes, with constant thinking, with a sense of urgency that makes you feel like you might lose it at any moment. But that kind of experience is not peace, it's instability. And instability is not the foundation of something God intends to last. When God brings your soulmate into your life, the feeling is different. Not necessarily louder, not necessarily more dramatic, but deeper, calmer, and more grounded than anything you've felt before. It doesn't pull you into confusion. It settles you into clarity. This peace is not about everything being perfect. It's not about never having questions or never facing challenges. It's about the absence of that constant inner conflict, that voice inside you that keeps asking, is this right? Should I stay? Why does this feel off? Because when something is aligned with God's plan, it may still require effort, it may still involve growth, but it will not constantly disturb your sense of self. Instead of anxiety, there is a quiet confidence. Instead of overthinking, there is understanding. And instead of fear, there is trust. And this shift is powerful because it allows you to experience love without losing yourself in it. In the past, you may have found yourself checking your phone constantly, analyzing every message, reading between lines that may not have even existed, trying to decode someone's behavior, trying to hold on to something that felt uncertain. But when God introduces you to your soulmate, that pattern begins to disappear. Not because you stop caring, but because you no longer feel the need to chase clarity. It is already there. You don't have to wonder where you stand. You don't have to question their intentions. You don't have to convince yourself that something is okay when it doesn't feel right, because what is meant for you will not require that kind of struggle to be understood. And this peace extends beyond just your thoughts. It reaches into your emotions as well. You feel safe, not just physically, but emotionally. You feel seen without having to prove yourself. You feel valued without having to earn it constantly. And most importantly, you feel like you can be yourself without fear of being misunderstood or rejected. This is what makes the connection so different. It's not based on pressure. It's not driven by insecurity. It's built on a sense of mutual understanding and respect that allows both of you to exist fully as individuals while growing together. God also uses this peace as a form of confirmation, not in a loud or obvious way, but in a subtle, consistent feeling that reassures you without needing constant evidence. Because when something is truly from Him, it aligns not just with your desires, but with your spirit. There is a sense of rightness that you can't fully explain, a feeling that goes beyond logic and beyond emotion, something that tells you that this connection is not just temporary. It is meaningful, it is intentional, and it is worth building. At the same time, this peace protects you from falling back into old patterns, because once you have experienced what it feels like to be in a connection that is calm and secure, it becomes much harder to accept anything that brings confusion or instability. You begin to recognize the difference immediately. You become more aware of what aligns with you and what doesn't. And this awareness helps you maintain the kind of relationship that God intended for you in the first place. You no longer settle for less, not out of pride, but out of understanding. It's also important to realize that peace doesn't mean the absence of effort. Every meaningful relationship requires communication, understanding, and growth, but the difference is in how those things feel. Instead of feeling like a constant struggle, they feel like a shared journey. Instead of feeling like you are fighting to keep something from falling apart, it feels like you are working together to build something stronger. There is a sense of partnership rather than pressure, a sense of unity rather than uncertainty. And perhaps one of the most beautiful aspects of this piece is how it reflects the journey you've been through, because by the time you experience it, you have already learned what confusion feels like. You have already faced relationships that left you questioning yourself, and because of that, you are able to fully appreciate the difference. You understand that this calmness is not boring, it is not lacking excitement, it is stability, it is security, it is the kind of foundation that allows love to grow without fear of it collapsing under pressure.